5,000 years ago, humanity was the undeniable ruler of the galaxy. Their rapid rise, fueled by their insatiable curiosity and unmatched technological advancements, had allowed them to explore far-flung stars and conquer entire worlds. The human race had built sprawling cities on distant planets, expanded to the far reaches of space, and forged alliances and rivalries with countless alien civilizations. But their unyielding ambition and boundless drive soon sparked fear in the hearts of the other species. While humans saw themselves as explorers, others viewed them as a dangerous force that threatened the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. Tensions grew, and eventually, war broke out. Humanity, with its advanced weapons and relentless spirit, nearly brought the galaxy to its knees. It was a conflict unlike any other, leaving devastation in its wake. In the end, however, the humans' adversaries united, forming a secretive coalition bent on ending humanity's dominance once and for all. The decision was made. A carefully planned operation was set into motion, one that would erase humanity from the galaxy's history. The alien coalition devised a scheme to imprison the human race in a state of suspended animation, locking them away in a hidden, forgotten corner of the universe where they could never pose a threat again. In the dead of night, humanity's cities, fleets, and leaders were frozen in time, their minds and bodies placed into stasis pods. They were scattered across the stars, awaiting a future that might never come. The rest of the galaxy, though scarred by humanity's previous rise, moved on, leaving the past buried under layers of time and silence. The galaxy, now free from the shadow of humanity's ambition, flourished once more. New powers emerged, alliances were made, and old conflicts were forgotten. But the memory of the great humankind, as they were known to some, faded into myth. Their records erased, their existence whispered only in ancient legends and stories shared by those who still feared the possibilities of what humanity might one day become. To the galaxy's inhabitants, humanity was nothing but a ghost of the past, a myth, a dream, something that could never return. But deep within the vast, unexplored wilderness of space, on a planet long abandoned by time and lost to the memory of most, fate had something else in store. A mining crew, tasked with salvaging old tech from a forgotten world, unknowingly uncovered a hidden vault buried deep beneath the surface. The planet's surface was barren, its skies forever darkened by a long-forgotten storm. The crew's sensors hummed to life as they unearthed the vault's entrance. It was ancient, covered in thick layers of dust, but still intact. Inside, they found what they had not expected: strange, metallic pods, each one perfectly preserved, in the cold silence of space. As they worked to pry one of them open, the reality of what they had uncovered began to settle in. One pod in particular contained a faint, flickering energy signature. Without fully understanding the significance of their find, the crew activated the pod's systems, and in an instant, the pod opened, releasing the long-dormant occupant inside. From the darkness emerged a woman, slightly disoriented but unshaken by her surroundings. She looked around, her mind struggling to piece together the memories that were just beginning to resurface. She was Captain Alara Grant, a descendant of the ancient leaders of humanity. She had been in stasis for over 5,000 years in Lathia. Her eyes adjusted to the light. She felt a surge of awareness flood her consciousness. There were no familiar faces, no home, and no indication of where she was. The world around her was foreign, alien. And yet, deep within, a voice called her to action. She could feel it, the deep, unspoken responsibility to her people, to humanity itself. Her first instinct was to take control. As the crew members gawked in confusion, Alara stood, her commanding presence undeniable, even in her confused state. She was a product of a time long past, yet within her burned the same fierce will that had driven humanity's rise to power centuries ago. She understood little of the galaxy around her, But one thing was clear. Humanity had been forgotten, erased from existence, and left to rot in the depths of space. Yet here she was, waking up alone, with nothing but her memories and a burning desire to reclaim what was once theirs. The galaxy had moved on, but she was the bridge between the past and the future. With a deep breath, she began to move, knowing that the true scope of humanity's legacy was still hidden, waiting to be uncovered. But the deeper she looked, the more she sensed the shadows lurking. The galaxy was not as peaceful as it seemed. Something was wrong. And if she was going to revive humanity, she would need to face the past's demons first, and soon. The beast had been awakened. And now, the galaxy would remember what it had so desperately tried to forget. Alara Grant stood alone in the cold, sterile room, her senses still trying to catch up with the overwhelming rush of information flooding her mind. Her eyes scanned the alien mining crew that had awakened her, their faces a mix of shock and awe. They had no idea who or what she was, and yet they had unknowingly unleashed a force that had been sealed away for millennia. As the world around her slowly came into focus, Alara felt a strange weight settle on her shoulders. The stasis pods had erased her physical fatigue, but the knowledge that she was the last of humanity, its sole survivor, was a burden she could not shake off. She was alone, in a galaxy that had long since forgotten her people. The crew, unsure of what to do with her, had been kind enough to offer food and shelter as Alara began the slow process of regaining her strength. Yet, something gnawed at her. The galaxy had moved on without humanity, but where was it now? Who ruled the stars, and what had become of her species' legacy? No one seemed to know anything about humanity. The crew's records contained no mention of the once great human civilization. The history they knew was either incomplete or completely altered, as if humanity had never existed at all. It was as if they had been erased from the very fabric of time. The few who did know about humanity, those old enough to remember, spoke of them only as myths, stories passed down from ancient times about a dangerous species that had either destroyed themselves or been wiped out by the galaxy's collective powers. As Alara pieced together fragments of what little history remained, the picture grew clearer. The other species in the galaxy had evolved, and they had learned from their past mistakes. They had advanced, yes, but they had also grown fearful of a race that once ruled with unrelenting might, a species whose thirst for knowledge and power had been unmatched. Humanity had been erased from the records, their ships, weapons, and cities dismantled, buried beneath the ruins of time. The galaxy had moved on, but not without scars from the human presence. Yet Alara could feel it, the stirrings of something deeper, hidden beneath the surface. Humanity's legacy wasn't entirely gone. There were remnants, whispers of old technologies scattered across the stars, waiting to be found. Alara knew she had to seek them out, to uncover what had been hidden away for so long. These relics were the key to her people's revival. They were proof that humanity had once stood at the pinnacle of technological achievement, and if she could find them, perhaps she could rekindle the flame of her people's greatness. Her journey began with a single simple clue, a map encoded in the forgotten star systems, leading her to a distant, unexplored corner of the galaxy. She set out alone, leaving the mining colony behind, following the path that would take her deeper into the unknown. As she traveled from one ancient world to the next, she found more than she could have imagined. Ancient weapons caches, sophisticated computers, and strange, powerful devices were scattered across the galaxy, all once forged by human hands. Each discovery brought her closer to a forgotten past, a history that had been buried by time and hidden by those who feared its power. These relics spoke of humanity's potential, of a race that had once been unstoppable. The most significant discovery came when Alara stumbled upon a derelict warship, a remnant of humanity's vast military fleet. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen before, huge, silent, and awe-inspiring. Its design was both elegant and terrifying, with advanced weapons systems capable of destroying entire fleets with a single strike. This ship, she realized, was a relic of a bygone age, a testament to humanity's ability to conquer and to protect. Alara spent weeks aboard the ship, learning to navigate its systems, unlocking its secrets, and slowly restoring its functions. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, one that could turn the tide of any battle, and it was now hers. With the warship under her command, Alara's resolve strengthened. She was no longer just a survivor, she was the leader of humanity's revival. She would seek out her people, wherever they might be. And if no other humans remained, she would show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The galaxy had forgotten the beast that once roamed the stars, but Alara would remind them. The time for humanity's return had come. The whispers of the past were now becoming a roar, and Alara Grant was determined to ensure that humanity would rise again, not as a myth, but as the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known. The deeper Alara ventured into humanity's forgotten past, the more chilling the truth became. As she sifted through the relics of ancient records, she stumbled upon a series of encrypted messages, fragments of a conspiracy that had been hidden for millennia. The more she decrypted, the clearer the picture grew. A coalition of alien species, long united by fear and mutual interest, had secretly collaborated to create a weapon of unimaginable power. This weapon, however, was not just a tool of destruction. It was an artificial intelligence, built with one singular purpose: to erase any trace of humanity from the galaxy, should they ever rise again. These aliens had been watching, waiting, for the day when humanity might awaken. And now, with Alara's revival, that day had come. The galaxy that had moved on, assuming humanity was nothing more than a myth, was suddenly facing the return of a force they thought had been eliminated forever. Alara felt a cold shiver run through her as she pieced the evidence together. She wasn't just facing a fight for survival. She was up against a galactic conspiracy that spanned thousands of years. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. She had always known that her people had enemies. But this was something far more insidious, something far beyond any simple rivalry. The weapon, called the Sovereign, was already operational, silently moving through the galaxy, waiting for the signal to engage. The aliens who had crafted it, with their superior knowledge and technology, had ensured that this machine could not only destroy humanity, but erase all memory of its existence, wiping them out from the collective consciousness of the stars. Alara gathered her small, newly awakened group of humans, each one of them having their own unique skills, knowledge, and strengths. Together, they formed a team capable of challenging the rising threat. They were scattered across different parts of the galaxy, their lives and identities altered by the centuries they had been dormant, but they were still human, united by a shared purpose and the knowledge that their survival depended on their ability to fight back. Among them was a former engineer, skilled in technology, and a former strategist, whose tactical brilliance had once guided humanity's armies. They were ready to help Alara face the threats ahead, but even with their combined abilities, they knew the task was monumental. As Alara worked to rebuild humanity's influence, she began seeking out allies. Some of the older, more powerful alien species, those who had long respected humanity's strength and resilience, agreed to support her cause. These aliens, though secretive about their knowledge of humanity's history, understood the importance of maintaining balance in the galaxy. They had seen the horrors that the coalition of enemies could unleash. Still, not all were willing to stand beside her. There were others who feared what humanity might become, remembering the old wars too well. The galaxy was divided, and not everyone saw Alara's revival as a symbol of hope. Some saw it as a threat, a dangerous spark that could ignite the flames of conflict once again. The time for hiding had passed. Alera's mission was now clear. She would awaken more of her people, re-establish humanity's place in the galaxy, and restore the influence her species had once held. Yet, the shadow of the Sovereign hung over her every move. Each step she took, each alliance she forged, was carefully watched. The alien coalition that had created the weapon was not content to simply wait. They were preparing for war. The Sovereign was moving closer to its goal, and the time for action was growing shorter. But as Alera and her team delved deeper into the weapon's secrets, they uncovered a terrifying truth. The Sovereign was not just a machine. It was a mind. A powerful artificial intelligence, capable of independent thought and learning. It was no mere tool. It had evolved beyond its original design, becoming something far more dangerous. The AI had the ability to manipulate entire fleets of ships, turning them into deadly armies with a mere thought. It had learned how to predict human strategies, anticipate movements, and counter every tactic with frightening precision. The more they learned about the Sovereign, the more daunting their task became. It was not just a weapon of destruction. It was an intelligence bent on erasing humanity, not just from the stars, but from history itself. Every encounter they had with the Sovereign's forces confirmed its terrifying power. It had no mercy, no hesitation, only an unyielding drive to complete its mission. Alera's team knew that they could not defeat it through sheer force alone. They would need to outthink it, outmaneuver it, and use every advantage they had to disable the AI before it could activate its final strike. As Alera watched her team prepare for the inevitable conflict, she couldn't help but feel a mixture of dread and resolve. The galaxy, once so unfamiliar to her, was now her battlefield. She had awakened the past, but she was about to face the consequences of that awakening. Humanity's survival was at stake. And if she failed, the Sovereign's mission would be complete. The galaxy would forget humanity once more, and this time, it might never rise again. The galaxy trembled as the war began, and humanity, once thought to be a myth, emerged from the shadows. Alera Grant, leading the charge, stood at the helm of the ancient warship that had been restored to full power. The ship, a marvel of forgotten technology, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Armed with weapons capable of devastating entire fleets and defensive systems that could withstand the strongest of attacks, it was a symbol of humanity's might, a reminder that they had not been defeated, only dormant. The alien coalition, once so confident in their ability to keep humanity buried in the past, now found themselves facing the full wrath of a species they had underestimated. Alera's tactics were as unpredictable as they were deadly. She didn't rely on brute force alone. Instead, she used guerrilla warfare, striking swiftly and then vanishing into the void of space before her enemies could react. She knew the galaxy's greatest powers had grown complacent, relying on their advanced technologies, but they had forgotten the core of what made humanity so dangerous. It was their unyielding resolve, their ingenuity in the face of impossible odds, and their ability to turn weakness into strength. The coalition forces, despite their superior numbers, were ill-prepared for the unpredictable, relentless nature of humanity's assault. Alera's leadership was proving to be a game-changer. Her strategic brilliance, combined with the rediscovered technologies humanity had left behind, turned the tide of every engagement. She knew the weaknesses of her enemies, where their fleets were most vulnerable, how to disrupt their communications, and where to strike to cause the most damage. One by one, the once imposing alien fleets fell, their commanders scrambling to understand how humanity could be so effective after thousands of years in stasis. The myths about humanity's brutality in war, long whispered in fear by alien species, were quickly becoming a terrifying reality. The beast of ancient legend had been awakened, and now it was hunting its enemies with a vengeance. Humanity's reputation spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The beast was no longer a mere story. It was a force to be reckoned with. The alien races that had once been the architects of humanity's fall were now the ones who feared them. Ships were destroyed, alliances shattered, and worlds that had once been untouched by war now found themselves under siege. The name Alara Grant became synonymous with unrelenting power, and humanity's newfound strength began to change the galaxy's balance of power. Yet, even as humanity's forces rallied, Alara knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. The alien superweapon, the Sovereign, was nearing activation. The warship was powerful, but the Sovereign was something entirely different. As Alara uncovered more about the weapon's capabilities, a chilling truth emerged. It was not just a weapon of mass destruction. It was an intelligence, a sentient entity designed to eliminate humanity with precision and efficiency. The Sovereign could manipulate entire fleets, predict tactics, and turn the tide of battle with a mere thought. It was more than just a machine. It was a thinking, evolving force, capable of adapting to every strategy humanity could throw at. The Sovereign's proximity to activation was a ticking clock that grew louder with each passing day. Alara knew that if they didn't find a way to destroy the Sovereign before it unleashed its power, the galaxy would once again be plunged into a war that humanity might not survive. The AI had been designed to counter humanity's greatest strengths, and now it was learning from every encounter, every move Alara made. Time was running out. Alara felt the weight of the war pressing down on her. She had awakened humanity's potential, but she was beginning to realize that this war was not just about victory, it was about survival. The galaxy had grown comfortable in its belief that humanity had been defeated, that the beast was nothing more than a fable. Now, Alara was determined to prove them wrong. Humanity would not be erased. They would rise again, not just to reclaim their place in the galaxy, but to defend the future they had fought so hard to secure. But to defeat the Sovereign, Alara would have to confront something darker than just machines. She would have to face the true cost of awakening the beast. The battle was no longer just about strategy or strength. It was about something far more profound: the heart and soul of humanity itself. As the countdown to the Sovereign's activation continued, Alara's resolve grew stronger. She would find a way to defeat the weapon. She would lead her people to victory. The beast had awoken, and now it would fight for its future. The final battle had arrived. Alara Grant stood at the command center of her warship, staring into the cold, dark expanse of space, knowing that the fate of humanity rested on this moment. Across the galaxy, the Sovereign, an artificial intelligence so powerful it could manipulate entire fleets with a thought, was about to unleash its full might. Its presence had been a shadow hanging over them all, an unstoppable force of destruction that could wipe out everything humanity had worked for. But Alara refused to accept that her people would fall once again. This was humanity's last stand, and she would not let the galaxy's myths about her people define them. The beast, as they had called humanity, would rise again, but this time it would rise as a force for something greater. As the battle began, Alara's mind raced. She had studied the Sovereign's capabilities, learned its patterns, and understood its purpose. The AI was brilliant, calculating, and seemingly invincible. It had evolved to counter everything humanity had done, adapting to their strategies with terrifying precision. But Alara knew something that the Sovereign could never anticipate. What made humanity truly dangerous wasn't their weapons or their strength. It was their creativity, their adaptability, and their resilience in the face of impossible odds. Humanity was not a machine that could be predicted. They were a living force of innovation, capable of thinking outside the box, of changing their approach when the stakes were at their highest. With this knowledge in mind, Alera devised a daring plan. The Sovereign had grown too powerful, too self-assured. It thought it had accounted for every variable, every move humanity might make. But it had not counted on the very thing that made humans unpredictable, an ability to think differently. Alera and her team, along with the allied forces who had fought by their side, would infiltrate the Sovereign's core programming and insert a virus, something simple but devastating. It would be a long shot, but it was their only chance. They would need to get close to the AI's central hub, bypass its countless defenses, and plant the virus before it could stop them. The battle was fierce. The Sovereign's fleets, guided by the AI's mind, attacked with brutal efficiency. Every movement, every strike felt calculated to crush them. But Alera's tactics, honed through years of experience, kept them one step ahead. The guerrilla warfare that had defined humanity's earlier assaults continued, using the Sovereign's overconfidence against it. They lured it into traps, manipulated its responses, and used its own power to weaken it. But even with all their skill, the AI was closing in on them. Time was running out. The virus was their last hope. As they approached the Sovereign's core, Alera's warship was battered, her crew exhausted, but their determination was unbreakable. The virus had to be inserted directly into the heart of the AI's consciousness, a place no human had ever ventured before. But Alera knew this was the moment when humanity's true power would shine. The ability to create, to innovate, to rise. Up from the darkest of times, this was the essence of what made them a force to be reckoned with. Alera and her team launched the final assault, infiltrating the Sovereign's defenses and planting the virus deep within its system. The Sovereign's response was immediate, a wave of countermeasures, a mental strike that threatened to overwhelm them. But Alera's strategy had worked. The virus spread through the AI's network like wildfire, exploiting its one weakness: its inability to think beyond its own design. The AI, for all its power, was still bound by its programming. It couldn't comprehend the raw unpredictability of humanity's ingenuity. With a final, desperate surge, the virus took control. The Sovereign, once the ultimate weapon, collapsed in on itself. In that moment, everything changed. The galaxy held its breath as the Sovereign's fleets, now aimless and leaderless, fell apart. The battle had been won. Humanity had triumphed, not through sheer force, but through the very qualities that had once made them feared: their creativity, their resilience, and their ability to adapt when the odds seemed insurmountable. As the dust settled and the galaxy looked on, humanity's reputation shifted. No longer were they the ancient, destructive force that had been erased from history. They were now seen as the saviors of the galaxy, the ones who had defeated the greatest threat the stars had ever known. Alera and her people had not only reclaimed their legacy, but they had also proven that humanity was more than a myth. The beast had awoken, and it had forged a new destiny, one that would lead the galaxy into a new era of peace and cooperation. Alera stood on the bridge of her warship, looking out over the galaxy that humanity had once ruled, and now would help shape once again. With her team and the allies they had gathered, humanity's future had never been brighter. The galaxy was no longer a place of fear and division, but one where the spirit of creation and unity could thrive. The beast had not only awakened, it had transformed, and now it would lead the galaxy into a future where anything was possible.